All right, we have people coming in right now. So as our attendees are coming into the room, we're going to give you guys just a few seconds, maybe about 30 seconds, so all of our attendees can get in the room. We have people filtering in. As our attendees are filtering in, I'm going to put a couple things in the chat box with some links. So you guys, all of our attendees should notice in the chat box now, there are links to our agenda for the evening, as well as our panelist bios. Additionally, I am going to share my screen right now, so that way everybody can see the agenda that maybe doesn't want to click on the link. So with that, we're going to just give it a few more seconds to let everybody get in the room and get set up. We'll get started in just a second. All right, it looks like folks are trickling in, so we will go ahead and get started this evening. Good evening, my name is Michelle Bird. I'm the Public Affairs Director for Larimer County. I'm going to be your Zoom host for this evening. So what that means is I'm some sort of combination of a moderator for this evening's event, the IT specialist for this evening's event, and a timekeeper. You'll notice that I'll be keeping time as our panelists are talking about their programs. One thing I want to point out before we get going is that I'm not a criminal justice expert. That is actually why we have our panelists here tonight. All of our panelists are part of the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee. And I want to tell you guys about that advisory committee before we get going. So the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee is an advisory and policy level board consisting of county elected officials and other principal justice system decision makers. This includes judges, prosecutors, public defenders, probation and parole officials, alternative sentencing and community corrections service providers, police, other first responders, human services, behavioral services, and juvenile service providers. The mission of CJAC, is what we call it for short, is to participate in a structured policy and planning process that addresses issues facing the county's criminal justice system. The committee sets priorities, develops and executes policy decisions, and strives to ensure an accountable, coordinated justice system in Larimer County. So a couple things before we get into the meat of our meeting tonight. First, you'll see the agenda is on your screen. And just a reminder too, if you just came in, I put links in the chat box to the agenda as well as our panelist bios. Second thing I want to talk about really quickly is you guys will notice that we are in a Zoom webinar. Now, if you're used to having Zoom meetings, you'll notice this is probably a little bit different. The biggest difference, there's two really biggest differences. One is that chat box. You'll notice that I was able to chat out to you guys and our panelists are able to chat out to you guys, but you're not able to chat back. The reason for this is primarily safety. It's actually all safety. We know that since we open up these meetings to anybody to attend, there could be someone that registers for the meeting and wants to get in the meeting and send out a link to all of you that maybe the link has a virus, it maybe has ransomware on it, might take you to a website you don't want to go to. And so what we want to do is really prevent our attendees from getting some kind of bad thing in their computer. The second thing is the video. You'll notice you only see the faces of our panelists. Again, that's a safety thing for everybody. We don't know who everybody is that's attending, and we don't know what they plan to show on their screen. So it's really just as a protection. However, it doesn't limit your ability to attend tonight. So to participate tonight. Of course, you're attending. You have multiple ways you can participate. You'll notice that there's a Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. If you are on either the Zoom app or you're on a web browser with Zoom, you'll notice that Q&A button is where you typically see a chat button. You can go ahead and use that to ask your questions. We're going to do questions at the end, but as we go through our panelist presentations and things pop in your mind, feel free to go ahead and type in those questions as they come into your mind, and we'll get to them at the end. Additionally, we know that folks tend to like sometimes to have a running commentary. They'll use the chat box. They don't necessarily have a question, but they'll use the chat box to give an opinion or add something to what the panelist is saying. please go ahead and use the Q&A box in the same way, and I'll make sure that those comments just go live right away, as long as there's not some weird link in them. I can go ahead and make those live. We don't want any of you to feel like we're trying to not let you, talk or have your voice heard. And we want you to know that we're hearing your comments and we're seeing your input. If you haven't, I don't see anyone who has dialed in tonight, but just in case I'm missing someone, if you've dialed in on your phone, so you're not using the Zoom app on your phone, you actually dialed in, you can also participate. What you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna hit *9, and that'll indicate to me that you wanna talk. You can also talk if you're using the app. What you wanna do is you wanna hit the raise hand feature. That'll let me know that you wanna talk as well, and I can set the controls to let you talk. You'll have to unmute yourself, but we'll walk you through it once we get there. But I just want everyone to know there's plenty of ways for you to participate tonight. We encourage it. We're here tonight to have a discussion about criminal justice in Larimer County as a whole, the programs. We hope that you have things you'd like to say or questions for the evening. One thing I want to remind folks, tonight is not an opportunity for personal attacks. We're here to have good, engaging conversation. And I'm sure everyone would agree with me that the fastest way you shut down conversation and progress is by personal attacks and getting defensive. So I'm excited for this evening. I think you're going to learn a lot about Larimer County and some of the great programs we have. I know our panelists are excited to hear from you and hear what your input on those programs are. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Emily Humphrey to give a few opening remarks.
Good evening, and I'm going to have Jill share her screen right now. My name is Emily Humphrey, and I'm the Director of Criminal Justice Services here in Larimer County. I've been fortunate to be a part of our criminal justice system for the past 22 years, and I'm honored to be a part of this group tonight. Tonight, we're here on behalf of the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, the virtual series number 4, which is post-sentencing. What post-sentencing means is this, is that an individual has either pleaded guilty or has been found guilty by a court of law and has been sentenced to one of the programs that you're going to hear about tonight. These programs that you're going to hear about tonight are alternatives to normal traditional incarceration such as jail or prison time. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Next slide, please. We're going to be talking about our criminal justice planning unit. We're also going to be talking about our bail bonding system and how that works with our pretrial services here in Larimer County. We're also going to turn and find out about our alternative sentencing departments and the programs that they have in our criminal justice system here locally. We're then going to turn to our community corrections, which I would say is second to none the best community corrections here in the state of Colorado. We're going to hear also from a lived experience, an individual who's currently in community corrections, and you're going to hear about his experiences and the treatment that he's received in these post-sentencing programs. And lastly, we're going to hear from parole, individuals who've been placed in the Department of Corrections and then are now released out of prison and are going to transition back into our community. And you're going to hear about the programs they have to make them successful and safe as they re-enter into our community. What I'm most proud of, and I'm going to ask for the next slide, is that an average cost of a jail bed here in Larimer County is approximately $120 a day. What you're going to hear from these subject matter experts in just a few minutes is that the programs that we provide are just a fraction of those costs each day for an individual to be a part of these programs. What I'm most proud of, in the year 2019, with all of these programs combined, we saved 723,992 jail bed days here in Larimer County with these alternatives to incarceration. We're very excited to give you this presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle to now introduce our other panel members.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yes, as Emily said, I want our panelists to introduce themselves before they start giving their presentation, so you know whose faces you're looking at. So Emily already introduced herself. So next I'm going to turn it over to Jill Fox.
Hello, my name is Jill Fox. I am the Director of Alternative Sentencing here in Larimer County. And I've been with Larimer County for 21 years, and all of those years have been with ASD, which I'm extremely proud about. And I hope tonight we just give a good general overview because it's a ton of information. We don't have a whole lot of time to go over it, but to have people walk away knowing a little bit more about alternative sentencing, the good that it does for our community, and the good that it does for the offenders in the program.
Thank you, Jill. Tim, you're up next.
Good evening. I'm Tim Hand. I'm the director of Larimer County Community Corrections. I've been in this role for 7 years. Prior to that, I was with the Colorado Department of Corrections for almost 25 years. I retired in 2013 from that department, and it's just been an honor and a privilege to serve as a director of Larimer County Community Corrections.
Thank you so much, Tim. And next, I believe who will be sharing a screen with Tim. We have our individual with lived experience. Is Daniel available to introduce himself?
Yes.
Great, go ahead, Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Seha. I'm here currently at the Halfway House in general population and as well participating in an RDDT program.
Great, awesome. Thanks for joining us tonight, Daniel. We'll talk to you later. And then finally, we have Melissa.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Gallardo. I am the manager for the Northern Parole region. I work for Department of Corrections. I started in 1997. I have worked with Tim for several years. And I have been in Northern Colorado managing the parole division for the last 7 years. And I've been, I was hired as an officer in 1997 and worked my way up through the ranks. Again, I share Jill's view that this is a very complicated system and it takes a lot of explaining and understanding, and I still learn stuff every day. So I look forward to the opportunity to speak with everyone this evening.
Thank you so much, Melissa. All right, so we're gonna get to the part of our evening where each of our panelists are gonna spend some time talking about the programs they're involved in. You'll notice that they're all very passionate and they love what they do. So I am here to keep time. So I may be interrupting them to keep them on time, but that's okay. I am gonna ask my panelists at this time if they'll turn off their video so that everybody can have their attention on the one panelist who is giving their presentation. And it looks like we are all ready. And Emily, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Can everyone see the screen? I think we're good to go. I have the opportunity tonight to speak about 2 different topics in our alternatives to incarceration. And the first one I want to talk about is our criminal justice planning department. What's really important and unique about our criminal justice system here in Larimer County is that we work very collaboratively with one another. We don't all work in our individual silos. And so our criminal justice planning is bringing everyone together to work collaboratively on innovative changes in our criminal justice system, to be on the cutting edge of new reform that comes forward in our criminal justice system. Whether it's criminal justice services, or it's the DA's office, or the public defender's office, or the courts, or law enforcement, or our community partners like behavioral health and Summit Stone, or our emergency room doctors, we work very collaboratively to plan out how we're going to move forward in our criminal justice system. And as the director of criminal justice, that is part of my job, is the criminal justice planning unit. And I want to talk a little bit about exactly what that does. The criminal justice planning unit assesses the entire public safety system here in our community. We want to make sure that we have justice and that justice is served in our community, but that we're also being efficient and we're trying to promote good use of our public resources. That's one of our main concerns. My job is to look at how do we reduce recidivism. And what I mean by recidivism is individuals who commit new law violations once they're out of jail or out of some type of program here in our system. How do we stop that from happening? And how do we safely reduce our jail population while still keeping our community safe? We do that by working collaboratively with our stakeholders and our community organizations to find treatment for people out in the community, and also to try to look at diversion programs to keep people from penetrating into our criminal justice system even further. We have the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, CJAC, that put on this wonderful 4-part series that works together to look at policy and change in our community to make sure that we are on the cutting edge and we're doing the right thing and we're serving justice. We also look at research and data to make sure that our programs are successful and we're doing what we promise to our community to keep them safe and to help individuals who are entering our criminal justice system, whether as defendants or victims of crime. Go ahead in the next slide. Now I want to talk about pretrial services. This can be kind of a difficult topic. Pretrial services is really how our bail bonding system works. And what that means is when an individual is arrested, they're going to go to jail. And when they're in jail, we need to figure out how do we release them safely into our community to make sure that they come back and answer to the charges that they've been alleged to have committed and make sure that our community is safe if they're released. So that is where our pretrial services department comes in. That's where we have bond commissioners, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But bond commissioners to really do in-depth investigations into these folks when they enter the jail to give informed information to the court so that they can make a proper decision on how an individual is released back into our community. I want to talk about the history of our pretrial services department because we're very, very proud of it. Our pretrial services department in Larimer County began in 1976, more than 44 years ago. That is an incredible amount of time. We are one of the longest standing pretrial services in the state. There are some smaller communities today that don't even have a pretrial services department, and we are fortunate to have it for the past 44 years. In 2006, we were one of 2 counties that had the first opportunity for sworn bond commissioners with release authority. And what that means is normally when an individual comes to jail, they're interviewed by our bond commissioners, and they give recommendations to the court. That individual will go to court, and the court will make a decision on their terms and conditions upon their release. Well, with this act in 2006, we were given authority from our chief judge and our administrative order for certain individuals with lower level crimes that met a particular criteria that our bond commissioners could assess them and release them out into the community under supervision without going in front of the judge immediately. That allowed for folks to not sit in jail longer than they absolutely had to. And so we were one of the first 2 to have sworn bond commissioners, and we're very proud of that. We also recognized in 2006 that this is something that you can't do on 40 hours, a 40-hour work week, that we needed to have this bond commissioners 24/7. So in 2006, we began a 24/7 pretrial bonding. What that means is when an individual gets arrested at 6 o'clock in the morning or midnight, there is someone there to begin that process, to interview them, to determine their level of risk, and give them the opportunity to eventually get out of jail as quick as possible. We are fortunate with our commissioners here in Larimer County and our county manager that we have 20 sworn bond commissioners here in Larimer County. Next slide, please. There's 2 reasons that for the purpose of a bond, and they're very, very simple. The first one is if we let an individual out who's committed a crime or alleged to have committed a crime, will they come back to all of their court appearance until their court case is resolved? That's the first purpose. The second purpose is if we let this individual out on bond while their case is still pending, will it be safe for our community? So that's the 2 things that the court has to determine when they set a bond and let an individual out of incarceration. Next slide. Here is our mission for Larimer County Pretrial Services, and I think it is spot on to what we strive to do here in our community. And that is to identify and interview every defendant who is appropriate for pretrial release. We want to provide accurate and verified information to our courts and to our public defender and our prosecutors so that an informed bail decision can be made that is based on the assessment of risk, thereby avoiding unnecessary pretrial detention and decreasing the demand for costly jail beds here in our community. But we also want to ensure that defendants' appearance in court and maintain community safety while they're under bond supervision by our pretrial services staff. That is our mission, and I think we do a very good job of that and have for the past 44 years. Now, there's 5 different types of bonds that an individual could get once they come into the jail setting and they're interviewed by our bond commissioners. The first one is a property bond. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because this is something that we almost never do in our departments. Basically, that is when an individual has to put up collateral, such as a car or a house, in order for them to be released on bond so that we make sure that they come back to court and that they are community, they're not committing new law violations while back in the community. That is something that we rarely use. We also have very seldom use a surety bond, which is bondsman, where an individual, an inmate has a transaction or an agreement with the bondsman, and the bondsman will post a certain amount that the court has ordered, and then that individual will be released based on that agreement. About 20% of the time, we have cash-only bonds, and that is when an individual has to post a certain amount of money, and then they're released from custody. They may have pretrial supervision, they may not, depending on the level of their risk. And if they attend all of their court appearances timely, at the end of their case, when their case is resolved, they'll get their money back. What I want to spend most of my time on this afternoon is talking about our personal recognizance bond or our co-signed personal recognizance bond. They're called PR and co-PR. What that means is that is not a monetary amount that someone has to post in order to be released. They're released on their own signature. And that's based on a variety of factors that we'll talk about soon. But basically, it's their promise to appear. They'll sign their name that indicates, I will come to court, I'll stay law-abiding, and I'll make sure that I resolve my case. And that's what a PR bond does. They don't have to post any type of cash money at that particular time. If they're a little higher risk, the court may ask for a co-signed PR bond. And what that means is not only do they sign their name, but maybe a family member, a father or a mother or a sibling or a close family friend will sign that they will assure that this individual will remain safe in our community and will return to court properly as ordered by the court. So those are the types of bonds that you could see when someone comes in front of the court or in front of our bond commissioners. The next slide is our supervision. An individual may post a certain type of bond that we just talked about, but they may be given pretrial supervision. And what we have is we have case managers that look at each individual, and they're assigned individuals to make sure that they are meeting their court conditions while out on bond. And we have 4 types of supervision. The first one is administrative, and that's our lowest level of supervision. Really what that is they have to do a weekly phone check-in, or we have an app on their phone that they can check in virtually with their case manager to let them know that they're remaining law-abiding. The main part of this type of supervision is what we will do is we will give them phone call reminders and text messages of their court dates, because we realize when we give them that information, they're more successful and they're likely not to fail to appear for their court appearances. The second form of supervision is our standard supervision, which is a little bit more arduous than our administrative. They have to do at least a weekly check-in with their case manager. They may be subject to monitoring to make sure they're not using drugs or alcohol, and they may need to meet face-to-face or over the computer using FaceTime with their case manager to check in. And again, we continue to ask them and to give them information about when their next court date is via text message and via a text message as well as a phone call. The next one is our enhanced. Our enhanced pretrial supervision is even more strict. And at that point, they have to check in at least twice a week with their case manager. They're subject to alcohol and drug monitoring if it's ordered by the court. And they may have 1 to 2 monthly meetings face-to-face with their case manager. And again, we'll do court reminders for them because we know that if we give them court reminders, they're more successful and will end up going back to court when they're ordered to do so. The last one we have is for our higher risk offenders that may have more risk to our community if they're let out. And that is called intensive. They have to meet with their case manager, check in at least 3 times a week. They're subject to monitoring for drug and alcohol use. They may wear an ankle monitor that has GPS capabilities, so we know exactly where they are in our community to ensure that people are safe and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they may have up to 4 times meeting with their case manager. Another thing that's important is if this is a crime where a victim is involved, there may be a no contact provision where supervision would require them not to have any contact with the person that they have alleged to commit a crime against. So those are our 4 types of supervision. The next thing is I just like to talk about our units here at Pretrial Services. We have 3 different units, and we're going to get into it a little bit more with our intake unit in just a moment. But that is our sworn bond commissioners that we've talked about previously that are working around the clock to make sure that people are being interviewed in a timely fashion and not kept in jail longer than they need to be. The second one is our supervision unit, which is the case managers that I just spoke about in the last slide. And they don't work 24/7, but we do work 7 days a week because we understand people have busy lives and schedules. So if they're let out of jail at 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, they have the ability to meet with their case manager to set up their programs to make sure that they're successful while they're out on bond. And the last one we want to talk about is our MIPS program, which is our Mental Health Intervention Pretrial Supervision. When an individual comes to court and they do a particular assessment when they come into the jail, they may determine that they have some mental health issues that may need to be addressed. We have a voluntary probation, not probation, but supervision on our pretrial that can help these folks leave jail and have services into our mental health community if they so choose to. And again, this is a voluntary program, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. The next thing I want to talk about is our pretrial intake unit. That's when someone is arrested in the middle of the night. They're going to come across one of 3 sworn bond commissioners, and they'll begin that interview process shortly after they're booked into jail. And when the court is making an informed decision, we are giving that court a bond application that is full of information that's going to allow the court, the public defender, and the DA's office to make informed arguments and informed decisions about how this person can be released in our community in a safe manner. We're going to run their criminal history. We're going to look and see both nationally and statewide and even locally what type of history this individual has. Or maybe they don't have a history at all. Maybe they have a violent history. Maybe they've never had any kind of even a speeding ticket. That will look favorable to the court. We're going to ask whether they have ties to our community. Do they have family members to support them, to keep them law-abiding, and to make sure that they're going to come to court when required? We're going to look at all of those things, such as work and employment, to see whether they have ties to the community, or are they simply passing through town and possibly are a flight risk. We're also going to do a validated risk assessment on these individuals, and that is called the CPAT. That's the Colorado Pretrial Assessment Tool. And it's objective questions that are asked to each individual that comes in that's been arrested to determine the level of risk, the risk of whether or not they will come to court every time they're asked to, or whether they pose a danger to our community. That assessment is done for every individual that comes before an individual who's been booked into jail. If they're in for a domestic violence charge, they will be assigned a DVSI, which is another form of tool that the judge can look at to determine their level of risk. And they'll also do a mental health screening, which is a brief mental health screening to determine whether they have some needs that we need to address when they come back out into our community to make sure that they're safe to themselves and to others. And again, all of this information is put into a bond application that's given to the court, the public defender, and the prosecutor, so that the prosecutor and the public defender can make appropriate arguments on the terms of this individual being released from custody, and the court can make the final decision about what is right for this particular individual. Next slide, please.
Just 1 more minute, Emily.
Okay, I'm going to talk really, really quickly. The next one that we've already talked about is our MIPS. And our MIPS program is voluntary, and those are individuals that are identified with mental health issues. Sometimes when they leave the jail, they have resources, but they don't know how to connect out in our community. And we're going to give them that opportunity by having a special person in pretrial that can give them that supervision and that guidance to maybe set them up with appointments for medication or even housing. So that is our MIPS program, and again, it's totally voluntary. The last slide I want to talk about is, I think, the most impressive. In 2019 alone, 491,504 jail bed days were saved for folks that were on pretrial supervision. So that means people were being supervised by our department for instead of being in jail overnight, or days for that matter. Our pretrial folks that work with these individuals work on average of 1,667 cases a month. And our failure to appear rate, which means they didn't come to court when they were supposed to, is extremely low at 5.79%. Our successful completion of pretrial individuals is 78%, which I think is one of the highest in the state. And the reason for a successful completion means they did not commit any new law violations and they made all of their court appearances before they resolved their case. We are very proud of our Pretrial Services Department, and I'm anxious for you to hear about our other programs that we have that are alternatives to incarceration. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Emily. All right, we are going to turn it over. Our next panelist to present is Jill Fox.
Hello, how are you guys? Everybody can see the screen just the same, I'm hoping?
Yep.
Awesome, thanks. So as I said before, you know, I've had the pleasure of working for Larimer County Alternative Sentencing Department for 21 years. And we have a lot of pride in that department. We do amazing things for the community. We do really good things for the offenders that are in our custody. And I kind of want to start it all out by talking about the mission of the Alternative Sentencing Department. It's right there in front of you guys. You can see it, but in a nutshell, we want to make sure that we're providing for community safety, facility security, and the welfare of the staff and the offenders that are in our custody. We want to make sure that we're allowing offenders to serve their court-ordered jail sentences while continuing to be productive, pro-social members of the community. And we do that by hiring highly motivated and well-trained staff members. So alternative sentencing is big, and it's trying to condense it down is going to be a little difficult. So bear with me as I kind of tear through these slides. I do want to encourage you guys, if you have any questions, because we really just are scratching the surface, forward those on to Michelle. You can reach us at our larimer.org website and find our email addresses on there as well. So as I'm going through this, if anything's pressing, if we can't get it answered today, we definitely will want to get that answered for you. So let's go over the 3 custodial programs of ASD. They're work release, work enders midweekers, and electronic home detention. With all of these programs, they are considered to be an alternative to straight jail time. And it has to be approved and ordered by the court in order for somebody to serve their time out in our program. And we do that with the blessing of the court, obviously. And I know there was a question on that as far as what factors are considered when sending somebody to an alternative program. So first and foremost, it does have to be ordered by the court. Secondly, all of our offenders go through a criminal history criteria check. We want to make sure that the offenders in our program are going to be low-level offenders that when they're out in the community living their lives as much as they can while they're in one of our programs, that they're doing it in a safe manner. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those with significant violent histories out of our programs. And all of our programs have an agreement that is signed by the offender. So it's essentially like their agreement to be in the program. It outlines the expectations for the program, and it sets out hopefully what we would like to think is the road to success in the program. And all of our programs have a daily fee, and those are all the responsibility of the offender. But that being said, we want to make sure that no offender would be turned away from our program because they can't pay the fee. And we always work out payment agreements and ensure that offenders are able to work that out on a longer term basis if needed. All of our programs also have substance monitoring as well. And then a program that we also manage that isn't a custodial program is our community service program. And I'll touch on that one a little bit later. And all of our programs are staffed by civilian staff. So the biggest program that I think a lot of people really are familiar with or they hear about more frequently is our work release program. That program houses 204 offenders in our facility here, and it's both males and females, and they're here for the duration of their sentence. So an offender will come in on the program on day 1 of their sentence, and they will be living in our facility for all intents and purposes like it's their home for the entire time until they are done with their sentence. The offenders, while they're in our custody, are able to sign out of the facility for up to 12 hours per day, and they can go to work, they can attend any court-ordered classes, they can do therapy appointments, they can go get a shopping pass, they can get haircuts, but all of those locations are managed by our alternative sentencing staff here. And while those offenders are out and about in the community, our staff are completing on-site job checks, and we're just making sure the offenders are where they're supposed to be when they're out in the community. As I mentioned in the first slide, we also do random UA and breath tests, and those are given to ensure compliance with the drug and alcohol policy within our programs. And then a little fun fact about work release, the average sentence is 47 days, and we have an 88% successful completion rate in the program. And one thing I didn't mention in the first slide, if somebody doesn't successfully complete the program for whatever reason, if they end up having a lot of rule violations or they commit a new crime while they're in our custody, because that alternative sentencing sentence was originally set to be a county jail sentence, they will be remanded to Larimer County Jail for the remainder of that time if they don't successfully complete the program. So the next 2 programs, which are pretty near and dear to my heart, I have to admit, are the work ender and midweek programs. This program both of them are identical programs, essentially. One is served out in the midweeks, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and the other one is on Saturdays and Sundays. And it's an intermittent jail program where an offender is going to be serving out their time on 2-day intervals weekly. So they may be checking in on a Saturday morning, and they'll get assigned to an offender work crew. They will go out and work at one of our nonprofit agencies or tax-supported agencies in Larimer County for that day. They come back and they sleep in our facility Saturday night, and they're assigned to a work crew on Sunday to go do the same thing, and then they're released Sunday afternoon. And like I said before, that is identical on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. This particular program really gives back to the community. So they're out, you've probably seen them on one of our buses from time to time, but it's a group of our folks that are out doing general labor at agencies that really need the help. So some of the agencies that we really regularly serve, we do Poudre School District, the City of Fort Collins Parks and Cemeteries, we visit Habitat for Humanity quite a bit, and we also have some Larimer County partners, such as the fairgrounds and the landfill. Now, because these offenders are out working in the community, oftentimes in the public eye, we make sure that this program does have the strictest criminal history criteria. And it also, because it does require manual labor, everyone has to be physically able to be in that program to be able to perform that labor. And that average sentence time in that program is 17 days. And one thing to remember with that, if somebody has a 30-day sentence, if they're doing their time in work release, they'll be serving day 1 all the way through day 30, so they'll be done in a month. But if somebody is serving out a midweek or work ender sentence, they're only doing 2 days a week. So it technically will take them 15 weeks to finish that sentence. So it does take a longer time, but it is only 2 days a week. So it allows people who have jobs that maybe are a little bit less flexible, as far as maybe they work 15-hour days, this might be a better program for them. And it may not fit into the work release 12-hour rule very well. So the next custodial program that alternative sentencing manages is electronic home detention. And it's really almost identical to work release, except that the offender is serving out their sentence in their home. They wear an ankle bracelet, and that notifies staff of any departures or arrivals from their home. And just like the work release program, the offenders do need to submit urinalysis tests. They still submit breath tests, and they're still checked up on by our staff while they're out on their jobs or while they're at their homes as well. And the average home detention sentence is 50 days, so it's a little bit longer than the other programs. Our biggest program, which isn't a custodial program, but it's definitely the biggest program that we have here, is our community service, or oftentimes useful public service, or UPS. It's the most common sentence that we process here in alternative sentencing. It's not uncommon to find somebody who has a work release sentence, and then they also have community service hours that they need to complete as well. And then we have plenty of people that just may be coming in on a sentence that just requires them to complete community service hours. And to kind of give you an idea of how big this program is, currently we have 1,700 active UPS cases, and then we also have another 2,140 cases that we're waiting to come in to do interviews. The community service program serves over 200 nonprofit and tax-supported agencies in Larimer County. And we want to do our best to make sure that offenders are working at agencies that they want to work at. So offenders will come in and meet with one of our case managers, and the case managers will set them up with an agency that is going to be hopefully based upon their interests, their skills, and also where they live. Some folks may not have a driver's license, so it doesn't make sense to give somebody who lives in Loveland an agency in Fort Collins to work at, because they're going to have difficulties with transportation getting there. So we really do our best to make sure that when we're matching offenders with UPS agencies, that it's going to be a good fit for both the offender and the agency. Now, I kind of give you guys a very brief, probably too quick of an overview of what the alternative sentencing programs are, but I really want to kind of dig into why is alternative sentencing important and why is it good for our community. All of our programs are designed to allow those who are sentenced to jail time to complete their time in a way that is more cost-effective to the public. It allows the offender to look for a job if he doesn't have one, or to keep a job if they do, and also to continue to attend either required or voluntary treatment or therapy that is helping them kind of improve their lives every day. And it also allows them to be able to support their families or attend to any other general obligations that they may have. based on 2019 estimates, and Emily hit on this earlier, the cost of housing one person in Larimer County Jail is approximately $120, and it's about $55 a day to house a person in alternative sentencing. So when you do all the math on that, alternative sentencing diverted almost $69,000 days from the jail last year. And when you start doing the math, it's about $4.5 million that was saved just housing those folks in alternative sentencing programs. Continuing on with that, when we talk about recidivism rates, if an offender is sentenced to alternative sentencing completes their time, 24% are rearrested within the year compared to that of somebody who was released from the jail. And that percentage is 31%. And that's defined as a new arrest within 1 year of release. For the community as a whole in 2019, we were able to save nonprofit agencies about $500,000 in labor costs as a result of the work crews that are provided by the Work Ended Midweek programs. Additionally, community service offenders completed a total of 134,377 hours at nonprofit agencies in 2019. And alternative sentencing is also able to provide in-house classes for programming to the offender population. And that's fairly new for alternative sentencing. We kind of started getting that going about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's made such a good impact on our offender population. We like to provide classes for financial planning. We bring in AA and NA folks in here. We provide fitness classes to the offenders and job skills classes. And most of those are provided by volunteer staff. And I know that there was a question as well that was talking about programming that assists with offenders with becoming more employable. And we do our best, as I was just saying with that, to provide in-house classes to include the job skills classes, resume building, and things like that. And then one last thing I wanted to touch on as well, and I know it was mentioned in the presentation that was 2 nights ago with the courts. One thing that Larimer County does, which is really important, is we play a very active role in our treatment courts here. We work directly with those courts to provide stable and secure places for offenders that may need it, depending upon if they're in like the wellness court, and if they're just not doing well out in the community, but the jail maybe isn't the best place for them, we can house them in alternative sentencing where they're getting structured housing, they're getting a secure setting to be in. And then we also serve as a great sanction place for people that may miss urinalysis tests as part of their treatment courts, where they deserve a sanction, but they maybe don't deserve to go sit time in Larimer County Jail. So we really work very well, very cohesively with our treatment courts. And that's one thing that I think is very significant that we do on top of all the other things that we do here. So I know I tore through that super quick, but I'm going to move on to our victim services section as well.
Hey, Jill, just a few more minutes.
Yep, got it. We have 2 fantastic victim services staff here in Criminal Justice Services. And just to let you guys a little bit know about what they do, they offer services to victims of crimes that fall under the VRA Act, which is the Victims' Right Act. And those victims have their perpetrators that are housed in one of our programs here. So our victim services staff will notify the victims of any custody changes or warrants of the offender. So for example, if one of their perpetrators who's housed in one of our programs is revoked to the jail, we notify the victim of that just to let them know that they need to be aware of where their perpetrator is at. We also allow the victims to offer input into evaluations and acceptance selections and the early release of offenders. And then our staff also provide referrals for services to those victims, and that can be from counseling or advocacy programs. And another thing that people really don't think about is sometimes our offenders that are in our custody could be victims of crimes. And it's also very important to recognize that, and those victim services staff do that same thing here. They offer crisis counseling to the offenders that may be victims of crimes, and they also do referrals to advocacy programs for them. So I hope you guys got an idea of what we do here in alternative sentencing as well as our victim services unit. And I will, I believe, turn that on over to Tim Hand here in a minute.
Thank you so much, Jill. And you are right. Our next panelist to speak is going to be Tim Hand. So we'll see. Tim's going to have to get his video turned on as well as unmute himself. There's his video. Hi, Tim.
Okay, hello.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. As Jill started her presentation, there is our mission statement. I want to share with our visitors today that there are 31 community corrections programs in Colorado. Larimer County Community Corrections is only one of 3 county-run programs, where the other 27 are for-profit and nonprofit organizations. Community corrections, once a community corrections is established in a jurisdiction, local control takes over, statutorily defined, to create a community corrections board made up of criminal justice professionals in our community, along with treatment professionals and citizens. We're very fortunate here in Larimer County because we also have on our community corrections board our county manager, as well as Commissioner John Kafalis. As Emily mentioned, our department is a model for many others to follow. We have visitors come here quite often to tour our facility. In fact, we have a tour set with our 8th Judicial District judges scheduled later on this month, where they can come in and see our program, visit with our clients, and get an opportunity to see our operations firsthand. You know, really, I think community corrections, and I'm just going to touch on this real quick. If I can go back to the original slide. Community corrections here in Larimer, I think we're unique in terms of how we operate our business. Our culture is really set to where we support and encourage our clients, and we hold them accountable, of course. But this is a place where our clients can make positive changes in their lives and become law-abiding citizens. They pay their restitution. They are able to pay child support, build a savings account. Many times when our clientele population comes in from the jail or on the street, they don't have any money. Oftentimes they don't have a place to live. So our goal is to provide them with a savings account, a good, meaningful job, which I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. But to really provide a structured, smooth transition, because we all know that everybody in our program will eventually return out into the community where they will continue on. I just wanted to touch real quick on a couple of things that Jill mentioned. We charge our clientele $17 a day, but we also have a sliding scale based on their level of, or their ability to earn money. They do take passes. They start out at level 1 and they work their way through level 4. And as they move through these levels, they get more privileges. And I will say that the most critical area that is a challenge for our department is housing. You can go to the next slide. So you'll see here we have our evaluations unit. And again, this is unique here because we are the only community corrections in Colorado who has an evaluations unit that goes over to our local jail and interviews and visits with individuals that are pre-sentenced, so that we can better understand their needs, what kind of programming we would need to plug them into. And I think there was a question about that, so let me just address that while I'm there. We have validated assessments that we use to determine the level of treatment that an individual would need. And those face-to-face meetings and assessments by our evaluations unit are critical, because we do not want to have somebody in our program that's not, our program isn't just set for that particular person. We have mainly 2 types of individuals in our population. Our daily population today is 242. We usually average around 320, but we do have some COVID restrictions currently. Our 2 main areas are transition and diversion. And the transition are cases that are referred to us by the Colorado Department of Corrections, where individuals that are inmates in DOC can transition out into our program and get the services prior to their period of parole supervision. The diversion program are individuals that are sentenced directly by our 8th Judicial District Courts. We have the majority of our population. Our population is about 80% diversion and 20% transition at this point. We also get referrals from parole and probation officers when they have individuals in our community that need stabilization, and when individuals on parole or probation are facing intermediate sanctions, and that also includes providing them with treatment services, which is the next bullet. So we run 4 residential intensive treatment programs, and those are 90 days. We have 2 for women and 2 for men. Those are 12 people per groups. We also have what we call STIRT, and it's a much shorter, but it's a kind of a 3-week quick kind of refresher for those that might have relapsed or struggling with their dependency in the community. Our residential dual diagnosis program really addresses both the mental health and the substance abuse in our program. And so, let's see here, there we go. So additional programs that we have are community supervision. So this is only the population that are the ones that are directly sentenced to our program. Once they complete the 4 levels and they progress through the program, earn savings, and are ready to transition to the next level, they will have an opportunity to go out into the community and be supervised by our department. When they come into our department and they come into our department and visit with their case manager, we do drug testing, and we provide them the support until they discharge. Employment services was an area also that was, I believe there was a question on. So let me touch on employment services. We do have an employment specialist. She works with all of our clients, and she provides them with employment opportunities. But prior to that, there are employment lab work, resume writing, soft skills building. We have interview skills, mock interview skills. Currently, we have 112 people employed. We have 33 people have part-time jobs, so the 112 is full-time. We have 7 people that are disabled, and we're trying to get approximately 48 people employed with gainful employment. One of the problems that we're facing with employment due to COVID is right now is the ability for our clients to get Social Security cards. And I also want to mention that we also have Medicaid technicians who are responsible to sign up our clientele for their medical needs. We have a day reporting center here at our building here in Fort Collins. We also have a satellite office at the Police and Courts building in Loveland, where we provide urine testing and other testing collections for probation, other outside collateral agencies that are asking us to test for substances.
Hey, Tim, just a few more minutes, okay?
Okay, all right. And then we have the juvenile transport team unit. And that's a small unit of 7 individuals. And when a juvenile is arrested by an officer, we take custody of that individual so that we can get the officer on the street immediately. And then we will transport that person to wherever they need to be placed. We do have specialty court, wellness court, and AIIM. I know Emily talked about that briefly. We have 70 people identified for this specialty court, and we're looking to build that in Loveland into the future. If I can get the last screen. So here's just some data that you can see. We have about a 7% success rate higher than the state average. The state average is always around the 53, 54 percentile. Restitution, you can see there's a great deal of restitution paid and how many clients we've served. There's the population split between the men and the women. And then as Emily mentioned in her presentation, there are many day jail and prison days saved by having individuals come through our program and receive the treatment that they get. And so that brings us to Daniel. And Daniel's going to come up and take over. And I just want to, before he joins us, I want to let you know how much I appreciate you willing to come in and be a part of our presentation this evening.
Thank you for having me.
So let me introduce to you now, Daniel.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, but I appreciate the opportunity. So, you know, I kind of, I've been wrapped up in the criminal justice system for about 10 years now. And I think I came in to the criminal justice system, not with just a substance use problem, but I came in with mental health issues, which is, I think, something that I think is getting more recognition these days, and people are making strides in addressing those issues, especially in environments like this. And so I think one of my biggest struggles, because I have been to DOC before, I have been in wellness court before, and probation and parole. And I think one of the biggest issues that I've had, other than maybe not being ready to be very receptive to the help, I think one thing I was missing was someone to really kind of take an opportunity to set me aside and say, hey, you have some issues outside of just criminal conduct and substance use. There are roots to those issues that maybe aren't being addressed. And I think in part to seeing that there were many people here in the halfway house that were willing to take me aside and provide that support and provide that structure and provide that one-on-one or in a group setting or whatever it may be, people with the word I'm looking for, with sincere objectives to making a difference. And I think my first bout here at the halfway house in 2014, I didn't see that as much, but I also wasn't receptive to it. When I came in this time, it was a hit or miss whether I was going to get in or not, and I was grateful that I did. I entered into the IRT program to address some of the substance use issues and provide some stable recovery time, so I could address some of the deeper issues. And then I transitioned into RDDT, and what I saw in that time was people, and not just in the treatment team, like therapists and facilitators in the groups and one-on-one and case managers, but I saw people like Tim Hand that were involved in kind of making the bigger moves in this facility, and people on the frontline staff and security, and that reached out and provided that extra, like, how are you doing? What do you need? And those things. And I think that was what kind of brought me in little by little, taking me out of that, that pre-contemplative stage, or even that, to finally realizing that there was real help here. And it's a little bit more comprehensive than just being on parole and probation and things like that, because it provides that much more structure. But it's not just that, but I see people here in the staff and in treatment that want to make a difference, that want to get to the root issues, that want to work on the hard problems with you, and don't judge you or give up on you just because you have a bad day or a bad 2 days or a bad week. Because Lord knows I've still seen those. And so what I see is real opportunity for me to go through this recovery, not just in substance, but in mental health and in my criminal conduct and how I interact with authority. And so I hope that kind of gives you insight on my, kind of what I see here at Community Corrections that has been helpful for me.
Thank you, Daniel.
But yeah, I mean, it's the culture that's been created here has been life-changing, and I couldn't ask for more. And I appreciate the opportunity, not just to be here in the halfway house, but for speaking to you guys. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that you were willing to come and speak to us, and good luck. It seems like you're doing a great job, and I know Tim was saying how proud of you he was earlier, and I wanted you to know that. So thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
Thanks.
All right, I think we're going to go to our next and final panelist, who is Melissa. Melissa, once Tim gets himself muted and video down, you can go on ahead.
All right. I also would be lying if I didn't say I was also nervous. So Daniel, you did an excellent job, and congratulations on your steps toward and maintaining recovery. So very nice job. So I will talk a little bit about parole. And basically, if I could have the next slide, I have one slide that has a lot on it. And so I will kind of pick a starting point and we'll work around. This day and age, we really do focus on the offender and what we can provide and what can be positive towards their success re-entering the community. So basically, where we start is upon intake with Department of Corrections, we really do start taking a look at what brought them to Department of Corrections and what they can start working on as far as their release plan goes. Many people go to Department of Corrections without a lot of support. And really there's no too soon of a time to start working on what that plan looks like when they are released from DOC. So when that goes, we have community reentry specialists that work in the facilities, and they basically start talking to the offender and asking, working on those criminogenic needs, asking what their needs are going to be as far as treatment, as far as support, Medicare, Medicaid, any type of treatment, drug and alcohol, mental health issues that need to be addressed. And we start with a supervision plan while they're in the facility. In about 2 years ago, we introduced, thanks to a Senate bill, a facility parole officer. This is huge when it comes to sort of bridging the gap between the Department of Corrections and releasing out to parole. Obviously, that's a big transition for some folks, especially if they spend any amount of time in the department. Lots of times, many years can go by, technology changes and develops as we move forward. So those facility parole officers really do help in facilitating, making contact with folks in the community, whether that be family, treatment providers, agencies. We also work with WAGEs, which is community-based organizations that can involve a number of people within the community that can help these offenders when they release, with a multitude of support systems. When they're in DOC, apparently I picked the wrong bubble to start with, but in the Department of Corrections, we have a facility case manager. Those folks are the ones that actually work with them in their case planning as well. They meet with them on a weekly basis, sometimes more than that, depending on the offender's needs. And so what we've really worked on a whole lot is really connecting these different positions from the beginning of somebody's incarceration to release to parole, to make sure that we're constantly working with the offender and identifying what is going to make them be more successful. Department of Corrections is obviously a very big agency that is complex, and so how it relates to Larimer County is that we have many of these community partners in Larimer County, and we work with those folks on a regular basis. So we do things such as case staffings prior to release. Once the offender is released, then we continue that case planning, and that changes pretty significantly for some folks when it comes to what their current needs are. We do several different types of treatment and interventions, and this is more when we come to the role of the community parole officer. Our jobs have really changed over the last 2 decades. At this point in time, we really do just continue to lead offenders down the right road and provide them things that they need. It was refreshing to hear Daniel speak about, you know, how it made a difference to him to just have somebody sit down and ask him you know, what motivates him and how that's going to change and take away just the part of the criminal behavior, but really start doing a deep dive into what drives people to kind of behave and act in the way that they do. Everybody brings something different to the table, that's for sure. And so community parole officer has really changed in the fact that we aren't necessarily there just for holding people accountable and doing revocation hearings and you know, returning people back to Department of Corrections. It really is an ongoing effort to continue leading them down the road in the pathways to get the services that they need. We do have employment navigators. That is one person that is assigned in Fort Collins. His job is solely to connect with employers that are felon friendly and that will hire these guys and give them a second chance at meaningful employment. And meaningful is a key word there, because I think many people do jobs and they're just jobs to them. But when you find that real niche where you find, you know, a passion or something that you're really good at or something that really fits your skills, that's long-term success. And that's what we definitely look for these days. We also have community reentry officers, which I talked about a little bit earlier. They go hand in hand with our community partners, which is a lot of faith-based organizations. The trend lately is, and I hope it's more than a trend, I really do hope it's sustainable, that we have a lot of folks in the community, such as the people that are joining this meeting, saying, you know, how are we going to reach out? How do we go ahead and move forward with this? How can we help? And we certainly appreciate that, and not for the community's involvement in kind of wrapping around these offenders and giving them the chance. As you know, most people that go to Department of Corrections do have determinate sentences, meaning that at some point they do come back to the community, and everything the Department of Corrections can do in order to make that a smooth and successful transition, that really is our goal at this point. So I will keep it fairly short. I'm certainly open to questions, and I don't remember if my email address was attached, but I'm certainly willing to work with Michelle to get that out to you folks as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And Melissa, if you want to put your email in the chat box, you should be able to chat it out to all of the attendees if you would like. And so that concludes our panelists for this evening. So that leaves us with a little time left to engage with questions and comments. So again, I'd invite anyone who has some questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A section, or go ahead and raise your hand and let us know you want to talk to us. I will have my panelists, it looks like they're on top of it. They're turning their videos back on right now. We do have some questions that we're going to start with. So I think some of these questions were partially answered during the presentation, but I want to make sure we get them fully answered. Tim, I think this is a question for you, and you hit on this a little bit, and I think maybe Jill did as well, but what are the factors considered when sending someone to one of these programs? I know we hit on that a little bit, but maybe we could summarize that one again.
I'll just touch really quick for alternative sentencing. So as I mentioned, they do have to be sentenced by the judge. So for whatever reason, the judge does not want them to be in one of our alternative programs, they simply won't qualify. So that's the first and foremost piece. The second one is criminal history. We want to make sure, and I kind of, again, rushed through this in the presentations, but we want to make sure that when we're accepting somebody into our program, they're going to be out in the community working, attending classes, doing all those things that they'd be doing in their regular lives. And we want to make sure that they're not going to be risk to the community, risk to the other offenders in our facility, or risk to our staff while they're doing that. So if their criminal history is too violent or the current conviction is too violent, that could put them out of criteria for our program.
Okay. Let me add, I think I might have mentioned this, but our target population is medium risk to high risk folks. We have a clinical director and we have outstanding therapists who work with our clients to, as Daniel mentioned, for a number of different needs. We utilize assessment tools to help guide us as to what the specific needs are for each individual. We really look at it as an individual assessment. We want to treat the individual, and that kind of sends our population into those different areas of treatment, whether it's 90 days of intensive, as Daniel mentioned, residential dual diagnosis in our wellness court, and other programs that we have here in our department.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Jill. Okay, next question has actually come up in all 4 of our sessions, or well, 3 previous sessions, or some type of question regarding racial inequality. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to discuss this again tonight. So I'm trying to find the question here. How is racial inequality addressed or being addressed within your guys' programs?
And I'm more than happy to answer that if you wouldn't mind, Michelle.
Thank you, Emily.
We recognize that in the United States that our criminal justice system has been called into question. And we recognize that there is systemic changes that need to happen all over the world, all over the country, and Larimer County is not immune to that. What I will tell you is that I think we have some outstanding alternatives to incarceration programs here in Larimer County that we believe are fair and consistent with each individual that comes through our doors. And we will continue to look at this topic. We'll continue to take advice and to do research, but we are committed to be fair and just in our criminal justice system, and we stand by that.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so you guys had a lot of great statistics. People love statistics in your presentations tonight. And you may have hit on this already, but let's make sure it's called out since it was asked. What is the percentage difference of reoffenders that go through alternative sentencing versus prison and jail? So I think what this question is asking, is there a difference in the reoffender rate for someone that goes through alternatives to sentencing or someone that goes through jail? Maybe this one will go out to Melissa and maybe others have something to add.
Sure, I can address that. I prefer to say that we have a 53% success rate, which means a 47% recidivism rate. And you know, that is one of our goals as a department and was for last year. One thing that we have changed quite a bit is a focused data-driven approach to reducing recidivism. And that is one of the things that kind of changed our services that are provided, like I was saying before, about providing something meaningful to offenders to give them the commitment and the want to be successful and the ability to do that and the resources available.
Thank you, Melissa. Did anybody else want to, do they have a statistic that they might be able to add? And if not, that's okay.
Well, I can mention that the State Division of Criminal Justice does our data, and Larimer County has always been above the state average on successful completions. As I mentioned before, this past year, we were 7% above our success rate, 7% above all the state combined. And although that number might not seem large, it is considerable when you're looking at the big picture of the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. That's a very fair assessment. Thank you, Tim. Melissa.
I did put something in the slides about that. Alternative sentencing has a 24% recidivism rate versus Larimer County Jail, which is 31%. And that's rearrest within a year of release.
Well, that's great data. Thank you, Jill. All right, with that, I'm not seeing that we have any other questions open. I don't see any hands raised. So I think at this point, what I'll do is I'll open it back up to my panelists to see if there's any last words they want to say, or if there's possibly something they missed that they'd like to get back to. And if I don't see it, they're all looking at me blank.
Can
Oh,
I
Tim.
start with that, Michelle?
Yeah, of course. Go
I
ahead.
just want to mention the caliber of the staff that we have here, and really, you know, when we talk about success, I believe that it's really about retention of staff, and we don't have a lot of turnover, so our staff know what they're doing. We have college-educated employees. Our staff are very passionate and committed to this work, and I want to make sure that they're recognized, because this is, as Melissa mentioned, this is not easy work here. We see a lot of things, and we work on a lot of challenges, and our staff are wonderful.
Hey, Tim, can I follow up a question with that? So is that different than what you would see? You mentioned that Larimer County is one of 3 county-run community corrections programs. Is staff turnover something different you see at a county-run program versus maybe one of those programs that's run by a for-profit agency?
Yes, clearly. In fact, the Division of Criminal Justice does some research on that issue every year and provides us with the information. And the turnover rate at the private community corrections programs is very high. And sometimes the breakdown is because of the newness, really. If you got to establish a relationship, you know, with people in this business. A meaningful relationship. And when your staff is moving from one, you know, you're getting one case manager, and then you get it to your home, and then you get another one, and then another one. That's really disruptive for individuals. We have case managers here and other staff that have retired after 25, 30 years of Larimer County Community Corrections. And I think that really says a lot about our department in Larimer County.
Absolutely. I think as let's see, 4 of you, 3 of you have been with the county or within your job, not necessarily the county, for quite a while. And I know, Tim, your career has also been dedicated to community corrections. So I think that speaks to the professionalism and the dedication of all of you. With that, since we don't have any more questions, which is okay, I'm going to go through kind of the closing of the evening. We did have one individual that asked if they would be able to have a copy of the program. Emily said that she would provide those slides. Additionally, I want you all to know, if you attended tonight and maybe you had a friend or a family member that didn't get to attend, that's okay. We are recording this, and we will put it on Larimer County's YouTube channel, where it'll be joined by the other 3 programs in this series session. So this is the 4th and final one. We've already had the first 3. Those are available right now on Larimer County's YouTube channel, so you're welcome to check those out. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I know there was a lot of attendees that have joined us for all 4 panels. I appreciate your dedication to learning more about your community and how criminal justice system in Larimer County works. We all know the criminal justice system is a key part and very necessary part of our community. And I thank you all for being engaged enough to learn more. And with that, if my panelists have nothing more to say, we will say good night, and we hope that you will continue engaging with Larimer County in the future. Good night.